Welcome back. The TRIP Foundation aims to expose students in underserved communities to a world beyond their own, to broaden their intellectual and cultural horizons, and to show them what it truly means to become a global citizen. Joining me now to discuss the work of the organization is Lidj Lewis, the founder and CEO of the TRIP Foundation, and Dr. Roshone Ault Lee, founder and principal of South Bronx Academy for Applied Media slash MS 296. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
Lidj, can you tell me a little bit more about how you came up with the idea to start the TRIP Foundation?
Absolutely. So I taught in the Bronx at a high school in the Bronx for about 11 years or so, teaching government and economics and global history. And invariably, I saw instances where when it came to trips, some students just didn't have the capacity to financially pay for it. Couldn't afford the Broadway ticket, could not afford the expense of the overnight stay to Washington, D.C. to see the monuments or go to the museums. Couldn't afford the ticket for Six Flags as part of the senior trip. So I would chip in, some of my family members would chip in, other teachers would chip in, but I asked myself, I said, well, if this is a problem just in my school, how pervasive is it elsewhere, not only in the New York region, but across the country? And that gave me the idea to start the TRIP Foundation, because I felt that every student should have the opportunity to experience what many of us take for granted. And so I put it on the shelf because when you're a teacher, obviously, you're teaching not only the classes, but you're planning day and night, you're grading papers on the weekend, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to launch it at the time. So when I retired in June of 23 from the New York City Department of Education, that gave me the opportunity to take it off the shelf, pull all of the infrastructure together, and launch it in September of 23 in time for the school year.
That's amazing. And with that, I just want to know, why is it so important to give children a chance to experience a world, beyond the concrete jungle that is New York City?
Well, as you alluded to, a lot of kids don't get the opportunity or rarely get the opportunity to travel outside the neighborhood or the borough or the city in which they live to see what the world offers them. And why not? Why not them? I've traveled around the world, 4 out of the 7 continents, and anywhere from Paris to to Rome to London to the Caribbean islands, and I figured, well, children should have the same opportunity. And what it does for them is that, yes, it does broaden their intellectual horizons. They get the chance to meet new people, go to new places, experience different cultures, the food, the dance, and I think the more they do that, the more we have the potential to create a world that is more tolerant, that is more just and more open. So that was my mission at the time. That is our mission now, and hope to broaden that beyond perhaps the New York region that we're operating in at some point.
Now, Dr. Roshone, earlier this year, I understand that you helped lead a trip to South Korea. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So earlier this year, specifically in February, I collaborated with another school in my district, and we both have a Korean language program. We share the same teacher. And just a little bit of context before the trip, when the teacher was hired, one of the things that I said is that we are going to South Korea. We're going to take some of our scholars, some of our families, and I was very happy to see that it did manifest. Now, when the trip began, before the trip, we used a framework actually that I author entitled the Price Framework. So it stands for purpose, relevance, impact, conditions, and evidence. And because we knew it was very important, speaking of the focus of the TRIP Foundation, for example, to take students beyond their comfort zone. They're learning about the language. We want to make sure they're immersed in the culture. So when we set forth to plan, we used the framework as a foundation. So we thought about, what is the purpose? Why do we want children to be exposed? And we highlighted that. Why is it relevant? Who will benefit? Why would it be worthwhile to take our scholars of the South Bronx and one parent or guardian with them, including staff members as well? And then we thought about the impact. So what will be the desired state when they return? What would they say? What are the conditions? That's where we got really granular, and the planning took off. And then evidence, when they got back, we identify like what would be the evidence that we would see to show this was a really great opportunity and a lot of energy and time that we put into it. We wanted to make sure that we just did the best that we could for our students.
Now, just hearing this, I'm like in awe just because I'm like, whoa, like I could imagine that experience for a kid to be able to go somewhere they probably never dreamed they could go to. I could imagine it was amazing. How did you help children prepare emotionally, mentally to kind of maybe travel? Because I know for myself, I didn't even get on a plane for the first time until I was an adult. So, how did you help these children kind of mentally and emotionally prepare for that?
Yes. So the great part about it is that they did their independent research and we helped the teachers, the staff. We set up guidelines for them to research and say, we're going to South Korea, we're visiting these particular places, and they basically were able to identify how long the flight was, what might be some things that they can do during the flight, throughout the flight. And so it became, they were able to own it. And their parents and guardians who accompanied them were involved in that process as well. So in order, at our school, our value proposition is empowering scholars by enriching their minds and illuminating their voices. So we were able to work with them to do the research, but then we really heard from them about how they were going to put measures in place to be really successful on the trip. And the final thing that I would say about that, we know that they were going into a place as far as the food would be totally different. So we had, through our Korean language program, the scholars tried out different types of foods. They identified what were their favorites. And so it wasn't totally shocking when they did arrive on the continent.
That's amazing. And can you just tell us a little bit more about the students at your school and just kind of give us a little bit more about the culture of the school?
Yes. So the South Bronx Academy for Applied Media, also called SBAM, is a dynamic place. It's a place where scholars, staff, parents, we come together. We're a true family. That's one of the foundational principles that I have, is to ensure that we all work, we coexist together in a place that ensures that we create these positive, phenomenal experiences for children. And I really enjoy our scholars because they bring a lot of ideas. They're not containers that we just pour into. They bring in their experiences. They have a lot to say about everything. And we just make sure we create the conditions for them to be successful. The school community, we are super excited. The staff comes every day. Parents, we have a great partnership. The district representation as well. We just really want children to leave SBAM just ready for the world, ready to go forward and be the positive force of change that they should.
Now, Lidj, can you tell us a little bit more about how schools can kind of have a similar experience where they give the children there an opportunity to travel abroad, and how can they, just get in contact with the organization to kind of take advantage of that?
Sure. Our model is pretty simple. Teachers come to us and tell us where they would like to go and what they would like to do. And that's how I got in touch with Dr. Lee here. I saw that they wanted to take this trip to South Korea. I said, wow, what a fascinating opportunity it would be for the kids. And so we funded their equipment and supplies that they needed for that trip. But generally speaking, teachers go on our website, they fill out the form. They send it in, we review it, myself and my board, we review it, and then we decide, whether to fund that excursion or not. And Dr. Lee isn't the only one who has come to us. We've had another school, the East Side Community High School on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. They took a trip to South Africa in May, and the kids had a wonderful time, life-changing experiences for them. We do local trips as well. A school in Yonkers wanted to take a trip to the fairgrounds in Queens for an automotive equipment show. We funded that as well. So whatever the needs are, we evaluate, and then we decide, whether we will actually work with the school.
That's amazing. I love to hear that kids are traveling abroad and kind of like taking on these adventures. I think it's amazing. Can you explain, what maybe some of the benefits for children to kind of go on those type of adventures and kind of explore the world beyond, what they're used to?
Sure, and I'm sure Dr. Lee can attest to this. When kids return, they have a new sense of agency, self-confidence. They see themselves in a different light. Our motto is that we want to be able for kids to not only understand that they are citizens of their own country, but also citizens of the world, that they can go anywhere, do anything. If they can be it, if they can see it, they can be it, right? That's the message that we want to send, and that's what we want our kids to get out of this.
That's amazing. And did you want to expand on that in any way?
And just to expand a little bit, it's the greater appreciation for where they're from as well, and really making connections to culturally and seeing that we might be apart by water or we're in a different continent, but we are people and we can be, we can coexist together even beyond the visiting the country, and they still have some connections in South Korea, for example, where our scholars traveled earlier this year.
Wow, that's amazing. I love to hear that. Now, I understand there's also an effort to kind of bring college into this. Can you tell me a little bit more about the college tours?
Sure. One of our programs is UCAN/college tours, and we know that many schools want to take their students to visit universities within the area. So there's another school, just to give you an example, that wants to take their students on a tour of HBCUs. Historically black colleges and universities. Howard University, Morgan State, Delaware State, and Lincoln University are four of the schools that the school wants to take their students on a trip to. And also, other schools within the region, state schools, private schools, and so forth. But when students go on these trips to colleges and universities, particularly if they're first generation or potentially first generation students, it shows them again what's possible, and they come back with the feelings, oh wow, I think I can do this, where they may not have thought about going to college at all previously, but they get a taste of what college life is like, what college expects of them, and the work that they have to put into it as well.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us and sharing this amazing organization and, telling us a little bit more about the stories that these children were able to go on. I remember as a kid going on like a camping trip for the first time, and I still think about it as an adult. So I'm sure, these trips are having a lasting impact on these kids that they'll remember, when they're well into their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So with that, again, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing and, coming on the show to talk about how you're making an impact.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Please go to their website at thetripfoundation.org to learn more. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.